Hey y'all, we're here at 6.3. So in this standard, we're going to be talking about cities and globalization. So if you don't have a template, here I'm going to show you really quick this super simple setup here. So first, we need to know the definition and example of world cities. And then for the second part of the standard, we'll talk about ways world cities function at the top of urban hierarchy, and we'll list some examples of networks. And then last, we'll talk about ways that these cities are connected globally. And then you'll fill in linkages and immediate global processes and just leave a space over to the right for each of those. Okay, so if you need to pause the video and set that up, go ahead and do so. I'm going to jump over to the PowerPoint here. And we're going to start. Just quickly refresh your memory on globalization we talked about in Unit 3. Globalization is just where you have, it could be a business, it could be an innovation, it can be any kind of idea, whether it be cultural or political or even economic, that spreads across the globe, right? So I always use McDonald's for an example. You can be in almost any country in the world and find a McDonald's. Okay, so that is globalization. So we're going to talk first about what a world city is. You do need to write the definition of world city. It can be used interchangeably with global city. And so a world city has a huge amount of influence, not just within the region that it's in or the country that it's in, but also around the world. Some great examples of world cities is New York City, London, Paris, Tokyo. I mean, who hasn't heard of these cities, right? So these global cities are centers of not only financial world, but have stock exchanges as well as these huge banking industries that are globalized. So world cities can also be centers for multinational companies. We'll talk about that in a minute. And can even be international organizations and cultural meccas of the world. Okay. All right, let's look at how cities are connected by global networks. So all these world cities are connected and they drive globalization. Globalization operates on a large scale and leaves very few people unaffected, even if it's in the most hard to reach places. That is the power of some of these world cities. So let's look at some of these type of networks, and these can be even categorized as ESPN. But I would list these in your notes out to the side of the networks on ways these cities can function as the top of urban hierarchy. So manufacturing and trading networks, transportation networks, banking networks, and even communication networks. Okay. What I did here is we looked briefly at this picture or image of Times Square in New York City, and we tried to look at some of these networks we just talked about. Right away, they noticed taxi cabs for transportation, but I really want you to look at some of the signage. And if you notice any like multinational corporations, so right away I noticed Disney, and then right over here, and then the back Coca-Cola. I think the Bank of America sign was brought up, and even though it's Bank of America, you guys understand that Bank of America is global as well. I think it's seen in like 35 other cities around the world. So then what we did is we looked at a similar area in Tokyo, Japan, and we tried to find also some networks. The girls noticed right away Forever 21 and then H&M in the background. There is also a Visa logo up here. So these are not only banking institution networks that we're seeing, but also, again, those multinational companies. Okay, and when we put them side by side, you can notice similarities and connections between these two cities. Okay, all right, let's look at world cities functioning at the top of the urban hierarchy. We did talk about this with networks, but I also want you to put in there that New York City is home to not only the New York Stock Exchange, but also the headquarters for the United Nations, which is a global organization. Almost every single country in the world has a representative for the United Nations, and their headquarters is in New York City. Who knew? All right, cities are connected by global linkages and immediate global processes. So I would list some of these as bullets alongside that of ways these cities connect globally. So they connect through media hubs, financial markets and services, and entertainment cities. So cities do provide a labor force and are also centers of creativity, innovation, and technological infrastructure. And so these cities have to be able to um, work at a capacity that like New York City has to be able to function if they're going to be trading stocks, right? And that's what this picture is of, as trading stocks. So cities do often come together. This is another way that they mediate and solve problems. And some of they might talk about problems that they all have in common. Those could be like problems with pollution, problems with inequalities and in their country, and even infrastructure. Okay, so that is it for 6.3, you guys.